more opportunistic approach to being able to figure out how to move forward. And sometimes that means engaging and communicating with the people around you, because sometimes the best minds are all around you, not necessarily yours. And one thing I want to just leave the audience with is just understand this. And I get this from the IPEC organization, is that the greatest freedom is the freedom of choice. So in any given situation you have as a leader, you have a choice to make. Am I going to take the team down a spiral road that will end up in probably resulting in minimal achievements? Or do I position myself to settle down, center myself, find those areas where I know I can bring strength to the team and collect to go forward in a manner that's going to produce the results that we all are looking to accomplish. So it is a mind shift kind of a process when you're in this situation. But you as a leader, you bring the people around you, whether it's inspirational people, whether it's motivational people, whatever it takes to move you and shift you into your sage, which is something Shahzad Shamin talks about, your saboteurs and your sage. But it's your sage power, your power of empathy, power of activation, your power of exploration, your power of navigating, and your power of just sheer passion for bringing the positive things to light will come across, and that energy will penetrate everyone around you, and together it becomes the greatest gift anybody can achieve.
Donc l'état d'esprit du leader a un impact sur le reste de l'équipe, explique Valérie. Et donc là, il y a une nécessité pour le leader, le chef d'entreprise, de garder le contrôle finalement face à n'importe quelle adversité et être capable de s'adapter à toute situation. Est-ce que le leader va choisir d'être victime de la situation et céder donc à tout ce qui va faire couler finalement tout le reste de l'équipe, ou alors va-t-il décider d'être celui qui va prendre la situation en main et plutôt influencer avec sa positivité toute l'équipe et trouver ainsi la solution pour sortir de la situation. Elle finit avec cette phrase en disant finalement la plus grande liberté, c'est la liberté de choisir, et que le bon leader, il sait toujours faire ressentir cela à ses employés parce que cela peut transformer en un atout qui aura un impact positif, un effet domino positif sur le reste de l'équipe. Olivier Ndjamfa, vous êtes un chef d'entreprise, vous en avez créé plusieurs, aidé plusieurs à grandir aussi. Donc, vous connaissez bien ce que dit Valérie, pour l'avoir expérimenté, pour l'avoir vécu en tant que leader. J'aimerais avoir votre avis sur finalement ce travail à distance. Et est-ce que cette nouvelle donne a changé quelque chose, notamment dans l'ADN de votre entreprise?
Définitivement, oui. Je pense que travailler à distance a amené des usages totalement nouveaux. Je pense qu'on peut même parler de nouvelle économie qui va s'installer. Et on a appris à faire beaucoup, entre autres avec la technologie. Ram a parlé tout à l'heure, il y a Slack, il y a aussi Teams, il y a Google, plein de technologies qui nous permettent de faire des choses qu'on n'imaginait même pas avant. Maintenant, beaucoup de gens savent partager à son écran, et on peut faire tout type de réunions, faire même des ventes, conclure des gros contrats en étant ça va aller bien sûr en se développant, mais on va aussi bien sûr l'accompagner avec le temps de se retrouver aussi. Ce n'est pas un shift que dans un sens, il va falloir apprendre à faire les deux lorsqu'on reviendra dans une situation, quand on sortira de cette situation. Donc ça, c'est la première chose qu'il faut retenir. La deuxième chose qu'il faut retenir, c'est que le leader, tel que je vois dans mon expérience, doit utiliser la technologie pour plutôt renforcer le lien. C'est ce que disent un peu Valérie et les autres ici quand on parle de l'humain. On doit renforcer le lien avec la technologie, non l'utiliser pour le contrôle. L'homme, après tout, c'est un animal social, et la technologie doit renforcer cette partie-là et non plutôt le brider. C'est ce que je pense intimement Et à la fin, ce que je voudrais dire, c'est qu'on a parlé d'ego, et je voudrais juste revenir là-dessus parce que je pense que l'ego, tout le monde, tous les leaders en ont. Je prends le risque de l'affirmer. J'ai rarement vu un leader qui n'en a pas, mais l'ego, c'est un poison. Donc, comme tout comme poison, c'est la manière dont on l'utilise ou la dose qu'on utilise qui est un sujet. Donc, on en a besoin. On en a besoin pour transformer les choses de son ego, mais le leader, entre autres, ici, doit utiliser son ego pour faire avancer positivement un projet collectif que changer un projet pour nourrir son ego. C'est mon intime conviction.
Thank you, Olivier. So to the question, what's your stance on remote working and has your company culture changed? Olivier says, first of all, yes. We have changed our habits. We're in a new economy. We have to become hybrids, but we also have to reinforce human connection. And all leaders have ego. Ego is a poison, but as it is with all poisons, it all depends on the dosage, on the amount you use. Will it harm your company or can you make it help your company? And so that is Olivier Njamfa's answer. Ram Castillo, has this new economy changed the approach to content delivery? And if yes, how?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if we continue on the thought that social media is the baseline tool for distributing messages in a marketplace, then we arrive at a standard where, as leaders, we can't just meet people where they are. We have to go all the way to where they are. So yes, there's a few layers. Speed, volume, and frequency is what we have to work with in the content delivery of what's expected by our people, including our staff and our customers or the people that we serve. So firstly, the speed. Content delivery is on demand. We all have some access to this, whether it's Netflix or whether it's Spotify, podcasting, our phone, we might read something, Audible, you name it. Amazon, we don't even have to move to do anything anymore, right? You can literally stay on your couch. If you leave your door open, I'm sure a pizza man or woman will go in and give it to you on your lap. That's why Uber has won. Could you imagine, like you just have blown an entire way of operating where you can be anywhere and the driver comes to you. And that goes back to branding as well. Uber's line is everyone's private driver. We all have access to a private driver. We all have access on demand. So there's the speed element to access, and content distribution is a part of that. The attention spans have shrunk. So we need to be acknowledging to that. People are less patient. The second thing is volume. It has to be, as you might have heard in many other places, but it's omnipresent. So what is omnipresence? Well, it's being present in multiple places and spaces with which your customers or your people are having conversations. Is it on TikTok? I don't know. Is it on Clubhouse? Maybe. LinkedIn? Perhaps. Facebook groups? YouTube? YouTube is now the second largest SEO, which is the search function outside of the traditional Google search. Don't know if many people know that. YouTube is now owned by Google. And so people are just searching on YouTube now, right? So there's the volume bit. Customer experience journeys are not linear anymore. They scatter. We have all probably filled out forms on our phone, on our desktop. We can save stuff. We can continue journeys on different touch points. And the third is the volume piece, which is, the frequency piece, which is around content delivery is consuming constantly. So here lies the opportunity. We now have a level playing field. As I said before, we have the opportunity for anyone, first and foremost, to be a leader. We have the opportunity because of fast, deep, constant content delivery that I highlighted, for everyone to have a voice, which is critical because there's a difference between lived experience and observed experience. And in order for us to be leaders to affect real change, we need different voices in the decision-making table. That's why social media is so powerful. We get to hear different thoughts. We get to hear different stories and insights. We get to be informed by people, not assuming we know the answer. So we have access to both broadcast and listen to diversity of thought and perspective. And I'll end on this for this question. The second significant area I think is worth noting is that social media has, what it's done is change the approach of content delivery in terms of data. Data collection is now what we need to use to predict what might happen. Crazy time. We now have to shift from conversations to predicting what might be spoken about. So there's no more guessing required. Never has there been a time in history where leaders can arrive at a hypothesis that closely positions a likelihood of success based on validating an idea early. You know, having created many different businesses and products for clients and myself, it comes down to this: you can now sell before you build. And so this is where it becomes extremely interesting in terms of content delivery. I've done enough talking, so I'll pass it back on to you.
Rapidité, volume et fréquence. Hein, ces trois mots. Rapidité, parce qu'on vit dans une époque où il y a plus de patience. En fait, les gens, je veux et je veux maintenant. Donc les gens ne veulent plus attendre. Le volume aussi, les gens veulent beaucoup, ils veulent beaucoup plus maintenant. Et à la fréquence, il y a tout à l'heure Ram a parlé de délivrer finalement le plus rapidement possible et le plus fréquemment possible aussi. Et dans cette société qui est finalement une société devenue une société de consommation constante. Et tout ça est bien sûr une opportunité, il insiste là-dessus. Mais pour qu'on puisse en tirer profit, il faut écouter les gens, il faut rester ouvert aux avis. Que veulent les gens? Et plus vous êtes ouvert, plus vous saurez ce que veulent les gens et vous pourrez vous adapter en conséquence. This is the last round of question, and I will go directly to Professor Vlatko Lupic. You think, Professor, that we must stop focusing on short-term profits and rethink for the long term. Why is that?
It's a very important question. Thank you, Remy. Before I answer it, I just want to comment on something that Valerie said in her question, is because if you look at the 5 levels of the management shift framework and emergent leadership model, at the lower level, we have more sort of a victim energy and the mindset. At the higher levels 4 and 5, it's more about victor. And why this is important? First, because we know from neuroscience, with our mirror neuron brain cells, we pick up the moods and emotions of people around us. So at the lower levels, it's like the negative vortex of energy. And then at higher levels, the better it gets, the better it gets. So it's very, very important. And we spread the ripples with our thinking, with our speaking, with our emotions, with our actions. And leaders spread the biggest ripples. So that's why we need to be at those high levels and spread those big ripples, which go from leader to their team, to their organization, and then to wider society. Now, back to your question, short-term thinking is more prevalent at lower levels 1, 2, 3. It's all about short-term profit maximization for shareholders. It doesn't matter what's going to happen next year and so on. When we operate from levels 4 and 5, we have this long-term view, the big picture. And organizations and leaders that operate at those high levels 4 and 5, they would want to achieve a strategic alignment of all stakeholders, not just a short-term profit maximization. One example, Paul Polman, a former CEO of Unilever, he refused to give quarterly reports to the auditors. And he focused on long-term view, and the share prices went up, they reduced the CO2 emission and so on. So all the KPIs went up. And there are many, many other examples. For example, Professor Sisodia and his team, they researched 30 companies, so-called firms of endearment, which focus on strategic alignment of all stakeholders, not just shareholders. And they have discovered that those companies have outperformed S&P 500 in 15 years by 1,058%. And this is aligned with other data points that I collected or I observed with companies I worked with. So we get substantial increase in profit when we don't focus on short-term profit maximization, but we focus on people, on purpose, on the wider society, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Vladka. Donc, à la question pourquoi se focaliser plutôt sur le long terme que sur le court terme, professeur Lupic, Vladka, nous dit que de toutes les recherches qu'elle a pu faire, mais aussi de toutes les recherches et les informations qu'elle a pu rassembler à travers les années, il apparaît que les entreprises qui sont focalisées sur le long terme ont de meilleurs résultats que celles qui sont focalisées sur le court terme. Le reporting qu'on doit faire tous les trimestres, en fait, n'aide pas les entreprises à progresser, mais au contraire, on dira dans un langage très courant, ça les plombe. Donc, elle recommande vivement de regarder plutôt vers le long terme et de fonctionner dans un modèle différent du modèle actuel pour plus de performance. Valerie, this is going to be my last question to you. And we're going to talk about diversity and inclusion. Why do you think they are key components in leadership, and how is diversity embedded and implemented in an organization's culture?
You know, Nadia, that is a topic that we could probably spend a whole hour on for sure. But if this example that we're all witnessing right here, right now, is not an indication of the power of diversity between the speakers and the moderators, I don't know what is. This is all about not tolerating diversity, but embracing diversity. So why is that important? The importance is so you get innovative, creative, and really thought-provoking ways to do better at whatever it is you're doing. If everybody comes from the same playing field, then you're not going to really get but so much new and creative thoughts and ideas. Diversity is just not about the way we look, although that is important. It's not the way we talk, although that is important. It's so many other things. The diversity of thought, the diversity of inclusiveness, being able to include others' ideas, have a level playing field, being equitable is also extremely important. So in my career, I was a part of a Fortune 500 company that really started to embrace this notion of diversity. We called it back then affirmative action, and we then called it balanced workforce. But at the end of the day, because the top leadership understood this was such a business imperative to have diversity of thought and diversity around the table to make decisions, it became something that manifested itself throughout the rest of the organization. Now, were there challenges? Did everybody necessarily salute and say yes? No. But I will say this, the importance is that it started at the top of the house, and they therefore then started to look at how to measure this, like any other business imperative, how to measure this human capital approach of bringing the right people around the table, no matter where they've come from or no matter what it was that they've experienced, but as long as it fit within the collective effort of performing and making results matter. So it was an embracing of this notion that takes time, but it wasn't just a tolerating factor where we just tolerate it, but we don't really understand how to leverage it. And so with any business imperative, you look for ways in which to capitalize on the best of the best, how to bring creativity there, how to then show the innovation that changes the landscape so that the collective we can perform at the highest levels possible. And therefore, you start to embrace diversity. And it has to become a piece of the fabric of the quilt that we are all collectively building to be better at what we do. So it's so important. And I would love to have another conversation on this with this panel and potentially others, because again, if this is not a sign that we're viewing right now of the power of diversity, I don't know what is. But thank you for that question, Nadia.
Il faut embrasser la diversité, il faut embrasser l'inclusivité. Et Valérie était en train de nous demander si, par exemple, ce que nous faisons ici, de voir toutes ces personnes connectées de par le monde, de divers backgrounds et de diverses cultures réunies autour d'une thématique commune, si cela n'est pas finalement la preuve de la perspicacité justement de l'inclusivité, de la diversité. Elle parle aussi d'équité. Et dit parce que finalement, nos différences sont une force et non une faiblesse, mais en fin de compte, elle insiste aussi sur le fait qu'il s'agit beaucoup plus de ramener la bonne personne à la bonne place pour avoir les effets escomptés. Je vais vous poser ma dernière question, mes questions à vous, Olivier Njamfa. C'est vrai que tout cela, c'est vraiment l'idéal, c'est très bien dit, mais ça n'empêche pas aussi la réalité. C'est-à-dire que dire diversité, dire inclusivité, c'est aussi parce qu'il y a des gens qui viennent des backgrounds différents et ceci dit, des cultures différentes, des façons différentes aussi de voir. Et ma question, c'est comment faire finalement pour que la magie s'opère dans ce melting pot de backgrounds culturels différents?
Disons que dans mon expérience, la bonne nouvelle, c'est que la technologie aide à ça. Ce qu'on est en train de faire, c'est l'aide de la technologie. On peut maintenant travailler dans un univers multiculturel, multi-pays, et ça, il faut l'encourager plus que jamais. Mais dans le prolongement effectivement de ce que dit Valérie, la magie s'opère lorsqu'effectivement on fait rentrer la diversité. Lorsqu'on fait rentrer l'inclusion dedans, c'est une évidence. Et quand la technologie le permet, il faut le pousser à fond. Vous voyez, je suis moi-même business angel, donc j'investis dans des startups depuis une dizaine d'années. Au début, il y a 10 ans, on regardait avant tout, avant d'investir, la qualité du leader ou des leaders qui portent le projet. On regardait aussi le projet lui-même, est-ce qu'il y a un marché, est-ce que ça va se développer. Eh bien, de plus en plus, on regarde la diversité de l'équipe qui constitue pour faire arriver ce projet. Et ça, c'est essentiel parce que la magie s'opère entre autres de ça. Je pourrais vous parler de technologie, mais en fait, je suis en train de vous dire que investir demain dans une start-up, eh bien, on regarde si autour, il y a une diversité en âge, une diversité en lexicité, géographie, et la technologie permet de le faire. Donc, si vous cherchez à recruter quelqu'un pour compléter votre équipe, poussez loin, allez le chercher là où il est, et comme dit Valérie, à partir du moment où il y a le fit, prenez-le le plus divers possible. Voilà comment la magie peut s'opérer. Et je dirais que quand on a quelque chose aussi divers, eh bien, ça permet de faire quelque chose qui permet de résister dans la technologie, c'est-à-dire de pivoter, c'est-à-dire de réfléchir régulièrement à sa raison d'être. Il ne faut pas hésiter à pousser le changement. Dans la technologie, on peut mourir en 6 mois, en 1 an, si on n'a pas pris le temps de se remettre en cause, à réfléchir régulièrement sur sa raison d'être. Voilà.
Thank you, Olivier. To the question, with platforms who will work more and more across multicultural environments, and how can we make the magic work? Olivier says technology and inclusion. Leaders have to be surrounded with diverse teams, and the more diverse they are, the better chances they have of performing. But also, leaders have to take the time and regularly think about their reason that they are doing what they're doing, their why. Because you might be a company of the future today, but you might be outdated very quickly if you don't constantly shift and adapt your why. So I'm coming to the last question of this webinar. Ram, what are the pitfalls and the dangers we need to watch in this world of new technology, social media, new economy, and what are we to fear most, and how can we become a major player?
Well, I think the pitfalls, dangers to watch with social media, or any emerging technology. Firstly, I'd like to call out the elephant in the room, which is, of course, misinformation that might come around. Fake news has been a large topic for the last couple of years. That might exist. So separating fact from fiction is critical. That's a pitfall, but that the social ethics conversation, responsibility is for everyone, both the media, the individual who posts content, a journalist, a podcaster, a blogger, a vlogger, all must be accountable in my mind. And for us to receive content, to vet the content, to inquire, and to be aware of how it might influence their decision making. So that's key. Another area is bandwidth and boundaries. So there's a physical layer to that, but that's not really where I see the pitfalls. I'd like to highlight the internal bandwidth and boundaries. You know, it's easy for us to bring to life that saying, comparison is the thief of joy, because we're endlessly looking at feeds, other people's lives, the news. So we've got to be conscious of comparing where we are on our journey as leaders, as people. There's also sitting with discomfort. I mean, how much are we actually sitting with discomfort? That alludes to building resilience, because in reality, we are consuming so much that we are in danger of not being practitioners anymore. There's the whole theory but no practice part of the pitfalls as well, with the technology age of accessing so much knowledge. There's a funny saying by someone that I follow. His name's Derek Sivers, and he said that if more knowledge was the answer, then we'd all be billionaires and doctors with six-pack abs. It's so true. So the danger is content overload, consumption fatigue. You know, if you look at someone like Brené Brown, she talks about rumbling with vulnerability, and she defines vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, emotional exposure. I mean, how well versed are we to play in the arena and expose ourselves? You know, living with your values, living them out rather than just saying it. You know, Brené talks about braving trust and being the first to trust, learning to rise. And I love when she said, and this is in her book, Dare to Lead, a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes, and who has the courage to develop that potential. So in short, pitfalls and dangers to watch, I believe, come under this: how much we allow social media to influence our knowledge, our character, and our belief system. In terms of the fearing most, I think it all comes down to us. I think we are the ones to fear most. You know, have we had self-inventory and self-check-in, as what's been shared by my fellow speakers here? Awareness of self, awareness of our team, awareness of customers. Are we getting in our own way? Are we taking responsibility for developing our people and their potential? Are we taking responsibility for influencing the culture of our organization or community? Do we even know how our brand and social media presence shapes the people around us? The problem is not usually the problem, as has been said by many leaders in the past. The problem is often our attitude to the problem. So social media for me, and technologies that are in use right now and will emerge, I feel it's kind of like a basketball. A basketball is a tool. If you can leave it dusty in the corner of your garage, or you can utilize it every day and be just as great as the LeBron James or Michael Jordans, you know, if you put practice and if you're built to deliver that. So Tying back to leadership in business, I'll end with this. I believe that everyone can be a leader if we're willing to pay the price. There's always an exchange. And as Jeff Bezos from Amazon says, if you can't tolerate critics, don't do anything new or interesting.
Donc, merci beaucoup à Ram Castillo qui répondait ainsi à la dernière question, qui était beaucoup sur le danger finalement de tous ces nouveaux médias, ces réseaux sociaux, de cette consommation exacerbée de contenu, mais aussi de connaissances. Il ne faut pas laisser les réseaux sociaux prendre un espace vorace dans nos vies. C'est nous qui devons décider quelle place ces réseaux sociaux, mais aussi les nouvelles techniques, les nouvelles technologies prendre dans nos vies, parce qu'en fin de compte, tout ça, ce ne sont que des outils. Et comme tout outil, on peut en faire quelque chose de positif, tout comme on peut se laisser aller et du coup perdre complètement tout le contrôle. Et donc, il s'agit ici d'être la personne qui est au-dessus de tout ça, et que les réseaux sociaux ne soient pas ceux qui nous définissent finalement, mais que ce soit nous qui les utilisons pour servir notre cause et pour innover, pour aussi apporter quelque chose de plus positif. Je vais directement rendre la parole aussi rapidement que possible à Nadia pour terminer.
Merci, Rémi. So I now want to thank our wonderful panel, Professor Lupic, Dr. Vladka Lupic, Valerie Mason-Cunningham, Olivier Amfa, and Ram Castillo. As you will have seen by yourselves, they have been absolutely awesome. And I want to thank Rémi, my co-moderator, for all the work done. I want to thank the Acosphere team in the background who's done so much for this webinar. And I want to thank all our speakers of the Instagram Lives who have attended this webinar, and all of you, our audience, thank you a million times and hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day. Blessings. For our speakers, please stay on Zoom. If you wish, we will continue our networking session. Thank you.